For 10 years, I sat alone at Christmas, at Thanksgiving on my birthday, not because I had no family, but because they chose to leave me out. Then one day I bought the one thing they always wanted, and everything changed. Family is supposed to be your safe place, the people who love you no matter what. But what happens when you're the one they ignore, the one they forget to invite, the one they treat like an afterthought? This isn't just about missing a holiday dinner. It's about being erased from the memories that were supposed to include you. And for years I thought I was the problem, until I realized something that changed everything. If you've ever felt left out by the people who should have loved you most, hit that like button and subscribe. This story is for you. Being the forgotten family member isn't just painful. It rewires how you see yourself. You start believing you don't deserve a seat at the table. The first exclusion. The first time I realized I wasn't really part of my family, I was 12 years old. Christmas morning. The living room was loud with laughter, wrapping paper everywhere, my cousins tearing into their gifts with excitement. I sat there waiting, because every year my parents gave them something special, something I never got. That year, it was a shiny new bike for my cousin Jake, a leather jacket for my cousin Mia, and for me, a generic gift card to a store I didn't even like. No thought, no effort, just obligation. I remember forcing a smile, pretending it didn't hurt, while my aunt patted my shoulder and said, "You're older now, you don't need toys." But Jake was only a year younger than me. Mia was older. It wasn't about age. It was about me not mattering in the same way. That was the moment I understood. I was an outsider in my own family. The worst part? When I quietly asked my mom about it later, she sighed and said, "Don't be dramatic. You got something, didn't you?" That's when I learned to stop expecting anything, to stop hoping they'd see me the way they saw everyone else. Holidays became something I dreaded, not because I was alone, but because I was surrounded by people who made sure I felt alone. The skipped birthdays, the forgotten invitations, the way they'd all laugh over inside jokes I wasn't part of. It wasn't one big moment of rejection. It was death by 1,000 cuts. And it started that Christmas with a gift card that screamed, "You're not worth the effort." Years later, I'd understand that their neglect had nothing to do with me. But back then, it shaped me. It made me believe I was less. And that's the thing about exclusion. It's not just about being left out. It's about being taught that you deserve to be. The broken promises. The summer I turned 14 was when I learned promises from family don't mean anything. "We'll come visit you in July," my dad had said in June, his voice cheerful over the phone. I spent weeks preparing, cleaning my room at my aunt's house where I stayed, making lists of all the places I wanted to show them, even saving my allowance to treat them to ice cream. July came and went. No visit, no call. When I finally got the courage to ask, there was always an excuse. "Work got crazy. Your mother wasn't feeling well. We'll definitely come next month." Next month became next season, then next year. The worst part wasn't even the disappointment. It was how casually they treated it, like breaking promises to me was normal, expected even. I'd hear them make plans with my cousins months in advance, booking flights, arranging schedules. But with me, it was always "we'll see," always maybe, until the maybes turned into silence. I started noticing the pattern, the enthusiasm in their voices when talking to others, the immediate yes to every request from my siblings, while my simplest asks got pushed aside. They'd promise to call on my birthday, then forget until midnight. Promise to send a care package when I was sick, then claim they got too busy. Each broken word chipped away at something inside me until I stopped asking altogether. That's when I realized empty promises aren't just about neglect. They're a language, one that speaks louder than words ever could. They say, "You're not important enough to remember. Your time isn't valuable. Your feelings don't matter." And after hearing that language spoken to you year after year, You start believing it's true. I carried those unkept promises like stones, in my pockets, not understanding their weight until much later, when I learned the most valuable lesson. When someone shows you who they are through their actions, believe them the first time. The wedding snub. The invitation never came, not officially at least. I only found out about my brother's wedding because my cousin accidentally mentioned it 3 weeks before the date. "Oh, you're coming, right?" she asked, her smile fading when she saw my expression. That moment of confusion, then realization, then pity in her eyes told me everything I needed to know. I wasn't invited. Not as a guest, certainly not as family. When I confronted my mother, she claimed it was an oversight, a mistake with the mailing list. But the seating chart posted online told a different story. There I was, my name in tiny print at a back table with distant relatives I'd never met, while my siblings sat up front with their spouses and children. The real knife twist came when the photos appeared. Picture after picture of the whole family, everyone dressed in their finest, smiling like this was the happiest day of their lives. My absence wasn't just noticeable, it was deliberate. They'd had a photographer stage full family shots, knowing full well I wasn't there to be included. That's when I understood. This wasn't forgetfulness. This was erasure. The message was clear. I didn't belong with them, not in their celebrations, not in their memories. What hurt most wasn't even the exclusion itself, but the casual cruelty of how they handled it afterward. No apologies, no explanations, just cheerful updates about how beautiful the ceremony had been, how perfect everything was, as if my non-existence at this milestone event was completely natural. That wedding became a turning point, the moment I stopped trying to convince myself they cared. Because when someone leaves you out of their happiness, when they document their joy while deliberately excluding you, that's not an accident. That's a choice. And choices, unlike mistakes, reveal the truth people are too cowardly to say out loud. The gaslighting. The most insidious part wasn't the exclusion itself. It was how they made me believe I was crazy for feeling hurt. "You're too sensitive," they'd say with dismissive laughter whenever I voiced my pain. "It's not a big deal," they'd repeat like a mantra, as if saying it enough times could magically erase my reality. I began documenting everything, saved text, messages where plans were canceled last minute, screenshots of social media posts showing family gatherings I wasn't told about, even keeping a journal of every time my feelings were brushed aside. Yet when I presented this evidence, the goalposts always moved. "You're exaggerating," they'd claim. "We didn't think you'd want to come," they'd lie, despite me begging for inclusion for years. The worst was when they'd turn my pain into my flaw. "Why are you always so negative?" As if expecting basic consideration was some personal failing. They perfected the art of making me feel unreasonable for wanting what they freely gave to others. Their time, their attention, their love. I started doubting my own memories, questioning whether I'd somehow imagined the slights. Maybe I was too sensitive. Maybe I was making mountains out of molehills. That's the true cruelty of gaslighting. It doesn't just dismiss your pain, it makes you complicit in your own erasure. You become both the victim and the villain, hurting from their actions while simultaneously believing you deserve it for overreacting. It took years of therapy to recognize this pattern for what it was. Not my failure to communicate, but their refusal to listen. Not my oversensitivity, but their profound lack of empathy. The day I finally stopped explaining myself to people, committed to misunderstanding me, was the day I began to heal. Because the truth about gaslighting is this: when someone constantly tells you your feelings are wrong, they're not trying to help you see clearly. They're trying to keep you from seeing the truth about them. The final straw. There's always that one moment when the illusion shatters completely. For me, it was the family vacation they planned for my father's 60th birthday. A week-long trip to a beach house, all expenses paid. I heard about it through my cousin, who casually asked if I was excited about the trip. My stomach dropped. No one had told me. When I called my mother, her response was calm, almost amused. "Oh, we must have forgotten to send you the details." But the resort booking showed they'd made reservations months ago, for everyone but me. The flights were booked, the rooms were assigned. My absence wasn't an oversight, it was intentional. What broke me wasn't just the exclusion, but the sheer effort it took to exclude me. They had to actively decide over and over, at every stage of planning, that I didn't belong. They discussed dates without me, chose activities without me, packed their bags without ever considering mine. And when I finally confronted them, the excuses were flimsy. "We thought you'd be busy with work. It was just a small gathering," even though my siblings brought their partners and kids. That's when I realized this wasn't neglect. Neglect is passive. This was something far colder, a deliberate, sustained effort to keep me at a distance. The vacation was just the confirmation, so I gave them exactly what they wanted: permanent distance. I didn't argue, I didn't beg, I simply stopped reaching out. And you know what happened? Nothing, no calls, no apologies, just silence. That silence was the most honest thing they'd ever given me. It told me everything I needed to know. Some people will spend years showing you who they are and still expect you to pretend otherwise. But there comes a point when you have to choose between their fiction and your truth. I chose my truth, and that choice, not their rejection, was what finally set me free. Walking away. The most powerful decision I ever made wasn't buying that house. It was choosing to leave without a word. No dramatic confrontation, no tearful goodbye. Just me, a single suitcase, and a one-way ticket to a city where nobody knew my name. People don't understand how quiet liberation can be. There was no moment when I officially cut ties, just a gradual realization that I'd stopped waiting for them to change. I stopped checking my phone for their calls, stopped rearranging my schedule for holidays they'd probably cancel, stopped letting their indifference dictate my worth. The first year was the hardest. Old habits die hard, and part of me still expected them to notice my absence, to finally care. But the birthday calls never came. Christmas passed without a card. The world kept turning, and so did I, just without them in it. What surprised me wasn't the loneliness. I'd felt lonelier surrounded by them, but the clarity that came with distance. Without their constant gaslighting, I began trusting my own memories again. Without their dismissals, I started honoring my own feelings. I rebuilt myself from the ground up, not as who they wanted me to be, but as who I actually was. Some people will tell you walking away is the easy way out. They're wrong. It takes unimaginable strength to look at the people who were supposed to love you and say, "No more." To choose yourself when no one else ever did. But here's the secret they don't tell you. When you remove yourself from toxic soil, you finally get to see what you're capable of growing into. I didn't just leave them behind that year. I left the person they'd conditioned me to become. And that was worth every moment of silence. The hustle. They thought I wouldn't survive without them. That's what fueled me through those brutal first months, the knowledge that they expected me to fail. I worked 2 jobs, sometimes 3, taking every shift I could get. Days blurred together in a haze of exhaustion. Stocking shelves overnight, serving coffee at dawn, tutoring in the afternoons. I slept on a friend's couch, then in my car when I overstayed my welcome. Every dollar went into a savings account they didn't know existed. Hunger became familiar, but so did determination. I learned the weight of a dollar bill when it's all you have until payday. The sting of judgment when people assumed I was lazy, rather than broke. The quiet humiliation of counting coins for gas. But with every struggle came a revelation. I was stronger than they'd ever allowed me to believe. Where they'd conditioned me to depend on scraps of attention, I now built real self-reliance. Where they'd taught me to shrink myself to fit their narrative, I discovered an untapped resilience. The jobs changed over time. retail to receptionist to remote work that actually paid living wages. The car became an apartment. The savings grew, and with each small victory, something inside me shifted. This wasn't just about money. It was about rewriting what I believed possible. They'd always framed my ambitions as unrealistic, my dreams as childish. Now I understood why. Keeping me small meant keeping me under control. But out here in the real world, my hustle was proving them wrong every single day. The late nights, the calloused hands, the meals skipped to pay bills, these became my education. And the diploma? Watching my bank balance grow while their assumptions about me crumbled. I wasn't just surviving without them. I was building something they could never take away, a life entirely on my own terms. The discovery. Fate has a cruel sense of humor. After years of radio silence, my mother's name popped up on my phone, not with an apology, but a real estate listing. "Thought you'd find this interesting," her text read, attached to photos of a sprawling colonial house with a wraparound porch, the same house she'd obsessed over my entire childhood, the one they'd drive by every Sunday just to look, dreaming aloud about hosting family gatherings there someday. Now it was for sale. I stared at the photos, tracing the familiar details, the bay window where she'd imagined Christmas trees, the oak tree perfect for tire swings they'd never hang for grandchildren. The irony burned. She'd sent this to me, the discarded daughter, as if we shared some nostalgic bond over this house that represented everything they'd wanted, without me in it. A few clicks revealed more. They'd been outbid years ago when it first sold, and now couldn't afford the updated price. That's when the idea took root. Not as revenge, but as reclamation. I scheduled a viewing that afternoon. Walking through those empty rooms was surreal, hearing echoes of their old conversations in spaces that had lived in my memory as myth. The hardwood floors they'd wanted to refinish, the dining room that could finally fit the whole family. Except now, standing in what would soon be my dining room, I realized they'd been wrong all along. This house was never about family. It was about image, about having the perfect backdrop for the perfect life they pretended to live. And now, I'd own their dream while they remained trapped in their lies. The paperwork took less time than their old dinner parties used to. When the keys hit my palm, I didn't feel vindication, just quiet certainty that some dreams aren't abandoned. They're just waiting for the right person to claim them. The power move. Signing those closing documents felt nothing like I imagined. There was no dramatic music, no overwhelming rush of emotion, just the quiet scratch of my pen across paper after paper as I methodically transferred their dream into my name. The realtor kept calling it an investment, but we both knew the truth. This was a revolution disguised as a real estate transaction. I paid in full, with cash earned from jobs they'd mocked, from opportunities they said would never come. The previous owners left behind a single item, an antique key holder by the front door, the kind meant to display keys for Mom and Dad and all the children. I left it hanging there, empty. The first night in the house, I slept on the floor of the master bedroom in a sleeping bag, staring at the moonlight through those famous bay windows. No furniture, no curtains, just the echoing space and the weight of what I'd done. This wasn't about revenge. It was about redefining justice on my terms. They'd spent years convincing me I didn't deserve a place at their table. Now I owned the whole damn dining room. I didn't immediately tell anyone. Let them find out through the grapevine, through shocked whispers at the country club, through Zillow alerts set to their dream address. The power wasn't in gloating. It was in the simple, unshakable fact that the life they wanted was now mine to shape. I painted the front door red, not as a message to them, but as a reminder to myself. Some homes aren't inherited, they're claimed. And as I placed my first piece of furniture, a writing desk by the window where my mother had imagined her reading nook, I realized this house wasn't the end of my story with them. It was the beginning of my story without them. The keys weighed heavy in my pocket that day, Not with vengeance, but with something far more dangerous to those who'd underestimated me. Quiet, unassailable freedom. The aftermath. The silence, shattered exactly 6 days after closing. My phone erupted with notifications, missed calls, frantic texts, even a voicemail from my father where his voice cracked on the words, "We need to talk." The tone wasn't angry, but bewildered, as if the natural order of their world had been upended. My cousin sent screenshots of the family group chat where they debated whether it could possibly be true, whether I'd really done this thing they all considered unthinkable. My mother's messages oscillated between passive-aggressive congratulations and barely concealed desperation. "We'd love to see what you've done with the place." The irony was almost poetic. After years of making me beg for inclusion, they were now begging for an invitation to my life. I responded to none of them. Not when my brother tried to bond over real estate investments. Not when my sister sent old childhood photos of us playing together. The power wasn't in engaging with their sudden interest. It was in mirroring their years of indifference back at them. Let them wonder. Let them wait. Let them experience the exquisite torture of being the afterthought for once. The neighborhood. Gossip Mill did the rest. They heard about the renovations from nosy neighbors, about my dinner parties from jealous acquaintances, about the thriving life I'd built in what was supposed to be their empty nest. Their dream house became a mirror reflecting everything they'd lost by underestimating me. And when they finally showed up unannounced one Sunday, just like the old days of driving by to fantasize, they found the red front door locked, the curtains open just enough to see the beautiful life inside, one they would never be part of. I didn't need to say a word. The house spoke for me. Some victories aren't about confrontation, they're about living so well that your happiness becomes the loudest response to those who doubted you. I didn't throw it in their faces. I didn't even answer their calls. I just sent one text. "Funny how things work out. Now you know how it feels to be left out." Rejection doesn't have to break you. It can rebuild you, stronger, wiser, and unshakable. This wasn't about revenge. It was about proving to myself that I was never the problem. That house, I turned it into something they'll never have. A home filled with people who choose me every day. If you've been treated like an option, remember this. You don't need their approval to build your own legacy. You don't need their love to know your worth. Sometimes the greatest power isn't in fighting for a place at their table. It's in building your own. And when you do, you'll realize the best revenge isn't hatred. It's silence. It's success. It's living so well that their absence doesn't even matter anymore. If this story resonated with you, smash that like button and subscribe. Your tribe is out there. Let's find them together. Family isn't just who you're born to. It's who chooses you, and sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is choose yourself.